Hi guys, it's Jackie with Intoxicating Arts, and today we're making a Father's Day card. I'm going to be using these two stamp sets. One of them is by Tailored Expressions, and it's called My Favorite Dad. It has all these awesome Father's Day sentiments on it, and I never buy sentiment stamp sets for just a specific occasion, but I've recently realized that that's actually a good idea because it'll last you years and years to come. And then this is a tool stamp set that I found at a convention, and they're actually some really inexpensive silicone stamps. This is a stack of demo papers that was sent to me by the Paper Loft, and I will be using, I think, just 3 different sheets out of there. And I just have a regular piece of white cardstock, and I will also be cutting out all of the images using my Silhouette Cameo and the PixScan Mat, so I won't have to fussy cut anything out. I will have my machine do that for me. And here I have all of the stamps on, well, not all of the stamps, but all the ones I thought I was going to use, on this DIY stamping tool. It's similar to a Misty, but it's like a DVD case and a lot cheaper. And this is perfect for these inexpensive silicone stamps because pretty much no matter what you do, silicone is not meant to have anything adhere to it. So ink doesn't work that well on it. You'll see here I use the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and it's kind of gray looking, and I didn't get a perfect impression all over the place. It's not bad. I mean, it would have been fine if I had stamped it this way. I probably would have went with it. But since I have the stamping tool, I'm going to do it a second time, and I will have a much better, more crisp, darker image. And I like being able to stamp all of my images at once like this. I didn't even end up using all of them in the end. I just wanted to have a lot to pick from. And in a moment here you'll see I am trying out the Lawn Fawn Stamp Chamois for the first time, and I do like it so far. It's pretty cool to be able to stamp and then clean off your stamps without using any chemicals. It's just a chamois and it has water on it. I had just taken it out of the package and tried it out, and it very easily gets all of the ink off of your stamps, and it will dry out really, really fast. This is exactly like those chamois that you can buy to dry your car with a streak-free finish. It's just a lot cuter in a small package, and you don't have to spend $10. I saw the bigger one at Fry's for $10, so this one is cheaper. It's also smaller. For coloring, I'm going to be using a mixture of the Chameleon pens and my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. And I'm just showing you here what these pens look like if you've never seen them before. They have a blending chamber in them, which is their whole claim to fame. And there's 2 different sides. There's a bullet tip, and then I guess you would call it a brush tip, but it's very skinny and pointy. So 2 really kind of smaller scale sides. You put the chamber on top of it like this, and you just wait for that colorless blending fluid to go down into the nib of your marker. And the longer you hold it this way, the lighter the color you're going to get. And the whole point of this is that you can start, you know, maybe in the middle or at the highlight of your drawing or stamped image, and then work your way outward to the darker area. And in theory, it's awesome, it sounds great, but I can't really find a good way to color with these to really get the effect and really be able to utilize that blending chamber that's on it. With that being said, I do like the way these pens color, and I also like how juicy they are and the nibs on both end of the marker. So I only own 2 of these. I have a red and a green, and I'll be using both of those in this video because I'm actually using the packaging of the stamp set as a reference for coloring, and it had red, green, and then kind of like a lime green, yellow color on there. So you'll see I go back a few times and put that chamber back on and try to just lighten it up a little bit, and I color it some more. And here's my green one. My green one is actually messed up, and you can learn from this. If you have it turned the wrong way, instead of having the blending solution go into your marker is going to go into the blending solution. And so the chamber on here that's supposed to be clear and white is dark green. And sorry, I gotta wrap my mom out here. We were coloring together and she's like, it's not working. And I looked over there and I was like, because you have it the wrong way. So learn from her mistake and do not turn it the wrong way, or you're gonna end up putting the color into the colorless side. And I have not yet figured out a way to resolve that. I tried leaving it like the correct way and it didn't do anything. So luckily I don't really care, because like I said, I just kind of use them like regular markers. And here I'm showing you the packaging and how I am just kind of using that for reference. And I have my Spectrum Noir markers all swatched out here on the packaging. Just sounded like an easy way for me to do that. And I'm pulling out the greens and seeing what do I have that will match here. And I also have the lights or brights. I think I have the lights set. So I'm just checking that out and seeing what colors to use. And I settled on CG1 and CG2. And just so you guys know, if you don't really watch my videos a whole lot, I really don't know what I'm doing when it comes to coloring. I kind of just do whatever I think looks good. And for the most part, it's just putting a darker color on the edges and then blending it out. And I actually recently colored in a lady stamp image and did the skin on her, and I was pleasantly surprised with how she came out, and it was really easy to do. I don't have the video edited for that yet, but I may put it up at a later time. So anyways, like I said, I do the whole image in the light color, and then I'll go around the edges with the darker one, and I try to do kind of like a flicking motion, not doing just like a line, so it'll maybe blend a little bit better in the end. And then after I go along the entire edge with the darker color, I like to go back in and use that lighter one to blend it out. A lot of times people like to use 3 different colors. It'll be a dark, a mid, and a light, which definitely gives you more of a shaded, blended, maybe a more realistic look to it, but that's not particularly what I care about. I just really like these markers in general because you can get some smooth color. So unlike, let's see, watercolor or just regular markers, you can get that streakiness in there. And so I like with the alcohol markers that you can lay down color and you just get this really nice smooth color. And I think I'm gonna move on to, nope, I'm still working on that sign. So anyways, just now I'm going back in with that lighter color, and you can kind of see I'm just slightly blending that in a little bit here. And then when I'm done with that, I will be coloring in the other pieces on here. If you haven't heard of the Spectrum Noir markers before, they are a much more affordable option to Copics, so you might want to check into them. So here you can see I'm putting this whole panel on the PixScan Mat, and it's missing a corner because I just really messed up on one of those pieces, so I just cut it off. I was like, I'm definitely not using that one, so we'll just cut it off. And then, so what you do with the PixScan Mat is you put it on there, you take a picture of it with your phone or camera, and then you will upload it to your Silhouette Studio. So for me, I use a phone, and then I upload it to Google Drive from my phone, and then pull that up in my browser and download it to the Silhouette Studio. Super easy, and then there's a trace function in there, and then you can add an offset to it. So that's what I always do. I put a slight offset to it so there's just a little bit of a white border around it. I do actually need to calibrate my machine. So I didn't have any printer paper to do that, and I had to just hope that it would cut it out well. And it cut it out well enough without being calibrated, but it definitely needs to be, because there's certain pieces in here that you will see are a little bit more to the right or a little bit more to the left, and I actually ended up scrapping most of those that were really obvious like that. I'm back to my DIY stamping tool here, and I'm using that Tailored Expression stamp set. The stamp that I ended up doing is If at First You Don't Succeed, Call Dad, and that goes perfect with the tools. And I'm trying to just get this lined up the best I can here. It's kind of difficult with the cling stamps because, well, it's actually probably better to use a Stamp-A-Majig because then you can stamp it on a piece of acetate, move that around, and then you'll have it perfect. But I'm kind of just winging it here, and it actually ended up working out, thankfully. And I'm leaving more space to the right of this because I will be cutting a tail into my stamped image. And then for this, I'm actually going to use some Versamark ink. VersaFine, sorry. I recently started using VersaFine for my sentiments, and I love it. It is definitely my favorite black ink for that now. I don't think it is stable for alcohol markers, so I'm still using my Memento Tuxedo Black for that. But for sentiments, it is so dark and it is so crisp, and it's awesome. Now that I've cut my little tail in there, I'm going to go around the edges of this piece with the Tim Holtz Distressor. I think it's called Distressor. I'm not sure. But it's really cool. It's this little thing that has all these little like razors in it, and you just run it across the edges of your paper and it tatters it up for you. And if you don't have one of these, you can actually just open up your scissors and use that, and that will definitely work. This is kind of a safer way, I guess, to do it, and it's a really inexpensive tool to add to your set. And now I will be coloring that in with the Distress ink in the color Tea Dye. This is a nice vintage kind of looking color, and I'm using one of these Sukuniku dabber, sponge dabber. And I'm just going to go along the edges, and I'm actually going to end up going all the way into the middle with this, but I'm going to be much more heavy-handed on the edges and specifically on the corners as well. I just want this to have a nice vintage look to it. So those white outlines on all of my pieces that I cut out with the Silhouette need to go away because I want it to blend in. I don't want it to stick out like a sore thumb. So I am applying the same color to all of the white space on these around the edges just to kind of make them blend in better with the card and just make more sense. So I'm going through all these papers now, and I will end up picking 3 different ones that I like. And since my card base on this is actually pretty big, normally I do an A2 size, but on this one I'm doing I don't know how big it is, probably 6 by 5.5. It's pretty big. And these papers are actually not big enough. So whenever that happens and I have a paper that I want to use, I will just cut it into strips, and then I'll put one strip on the top and one on the bottom. And if you do that, just make sure that you make the thickness of them thicker than you need, because you're going to put the other piece of paper on top of that, and it's going to give the illusion that you have a full piece of paper underneath it. And on this, I did use the tea dye ink as well, just to kind of make it all blend together nicely. So I just put some strips of adhesive down on here on my card base and trying to perfectly get that piece of paper lined up on there. Put it down, and then I can put the other piece on top of it. I wanted to have a lot of layers on this card, so I put a piece of foam on the back of this pattern piece right here, and then the foam only has stickiness on one side, so then I have to go and put adhesive on the other part, which is perfectly fine. It works great. And so this is like a thin piece of foam, and then I'm going to have some pieces that have thicker foam on it, and then I have even another foam, which is like a roll of foam. So I have like all these different heights going on in the card. It's kind of fun. So here I am just gonna go ahead and put everything down like I was telling you, using a bunch of various adhesives and just putting this in a way that looks good to me. And I had actually previously put everything on the card, stared at it for a while, moved things around a little bit, and then decided on this configuration. And you can see the screwdriver is popped way up. It's on some really thick, what are those called? Foam squares. So it's really making an impact. It's like the main focus, I guess. And the card is now done. That's all there is to it. It did take me quite a while to make this card just because there's a lot of steps and you have to color everything in. So it took about an hour and 40 minutes to make. And oh yeah, I'm going to do an inside sentiment. I mean, I had all those sentiments to pick from, so I might as well. And this one says, Happy Father's Day from your favorite child, which I think is adorable. But I'm actually going to mask off the from your favorite child part simply because a previous year I've already done that. I already said from your favorite child. So I feel like doing it like more than 1 year within like a 5-year span is kind of like, I don't know. I think it's awesome. I really love this sentiment, but I was like, my sister was probably be like, okay, we get it. So I think it's her turn to make a card or give him a card that says from your favorite child. It's her turn now. So I just figured it would be best to mask that off. But I really love this stamp set. I'm so glad I got it, and I'm definitely going to be getting stamp sets like this in the future that have a bunch of the same type of sentiment, because then you're good for like 5 to 10 years. And again, using that VersaFine ink, it just stamps so beautifully. I love it. And here's a picture of the card. I will link a blog post that has all of the supplies. Thank you so much for watching.